Okay, you're live.
Alrighty, I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the third meeting for the subcommittee on federal rescheduling, descheduling. We're probably going to change the name of the committee to just Subcommittee on Rescheduling, Descheduling, considering what we'll be studying. And so now I'm going to move on to roll call. Is Member Klein present?
Yes, I'm present.
Is Member Hughes present?
I'm present.
Is Member Bertolo present?
Yes, I'm here.
Is Member Britton present?
I'm here.
Alrighty, we're going to move on now to agenda item number 1, public comment.
To provide public comment via Zoom, visit ccb.nv.gov. Click the Public Meetings tab and then select Commission Meetings. The link to the meeting can be found on today's agenda. You may also join by phone by calling 669-444-9171 and our webinar ID 815-8127-9214, followed by passcode 504469. If you wish to provide public comment, click the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen if joining by Zoom. If joining by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. As a reminder, public comment is limited to 3 minutes. We will let you know when you have 30 seconds left of your time. Patrice Saunders, go ahead with your public comment.
Hi, this is Patrice Saunders. For the record, I'm with Last Prisoners Project and Americans for Safe Access. I have been affected by the war on drugs at a state level and a federal level in Las Vegas, Nevada. I've been advocating for safe access for patients and had my rights destroyed in the process. After I was set up by the DEA, after I met President Obama and asked him about medical cannabis patients' rights in 2010, I got indicted. 2014, I went to prison. 2016, I helped grand open a few of the dispensaries here in town. Fast forward 2019, they changed the law to exclude me from working in the industry. I've been actively advocating for myself and others who do not have a voice, who've been affected by this drug war at a federal level. Not only have I been affected at a state level, I've had my rights stripped of me after I helped build an industry and make hundreds of millions of dollars for local business owners and the state. I find myself still advocating for social justice. Only in the wake of me bringing this up to light that they wrote SB 277 to kind of mitigate some of the things that I've been speaking about over the past 3 years, which is really disconcerting to me that I had to wait almost 4 years just to get some type of somebody to listen to me. With federal rescheduling, it's going to put it into the control of the DEA. And I think that would be harmful for people who have already obtained safe access. I think that would wipe out some of the things that states put into place. So I think it needs to be descheduled rather than rescheduled, because I think rescheduling is not going to be helpful for states across the nation as well as the state of Nevada. Also, I think that there is no people of color on this board that you guys are doing. Nobody has been affected by the war on drugs that I see when you guys are calling experts into play. I would love to participate and give my expertise, since I helped build the industry and I've been affected more than most at a state level and a federal level, with the state of Nevada strategically writing laws to exclude me, including this lounge bill that they just wrote. I got excluded by 0.5% of not being in the impacted area when I've definitely been impacted at a state level and a federal level.
30 seconds.
Systematic things in place that have prevented me from working and have destroyed my life in the state of Nevada, and the federal government is responsible for reparations to me and my family. for the harm sustained mental, emotionally, and financially. My name is Catrice Saunders, and I'm with Last Prisoners Project. Thank you for your time, and I can be reached by email or telephone as well.
If you wish to provide public comment, click the raise hand icon or dial *9 to raise your hand. We have no additional public comment.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. We will move on in our agenda, if I can find it. I'm actually going to take the meeting minutes after. So I'm going to take an item out of order. I'm going to move on to agenda item number 3, presentations from subject matter expert. And so we'll start with that, and then we can move on to other items after we've heard from our subject matter expert today. And so I'm going to introduce him right now. His name is Howard Sklamberg. Just a little bit about Mr. Sklamberg. He counsels clients on a wide range of compliance and enforcement issues related to U.S. Food and Drug Administration regulation and policy. His experience is rooted in a deep understanding of U.S. and foreign food, drug, and medical devices law and policy, and is able to guide domestic and international clients through the regulatory challenges they face. Prior to entering private practice, Howard held a variety of roles at FDA from 2010 to 2017, including Deputy Commissioner for Global Regulatory Operations and Policy, Director of the Office of Compliance, Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, Deputy Associate Commissioner for Regulatory Affairs, and Director in the Office of Enforcement. While at the agency, he directed an office of over 5,000 employees and more than 200 offices, laboratories, and import facilities across the United States, Asia, Europe, and Latin America. As Deputy Commissioner, Howard was FDA's top enforcement official. He oversaw the agency's inspections, enforcement, recalls, and import operation programs. Howard also led FDA's international program, including its agreements and cooperation with foreign regulators, harmonization initiatives, and oversight over the global supply chain. He also interacted with and testified before Congress on behalf of the agency, co-led FDA's implementation of the FDA Food Safety Modernization Act, and was the lead official at FDA on a variety of issues, including cannabis and hemp, counterfeit drugs, and FDA's mutual recognition agreement with the European Union. Earlier in his career, Howard served as a prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C., and in the Public Integrity section of the Criminal Division at the Department of Justice. As a prosecutor, Howard was the sole or lead prosecutor in over 40 criminal trials. So thank you, Mr. Sklamberg, for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking time to meet with our subcommittee. And I apologize we weren't able to connect offline, but to kind of give you an idea of why we wanted you here, and I'm sure Member Klein may have already informed you, we were created by the Cannabis Advisory Commission, which was created by our legislator. And in some recent legislation, we were asked to study what the potential effects will be on the Nevada cannabis industry if the feds decided to reschedule or deschedule cannabis as a controlled one substance on the Federal Controlled Substances Act, or if it occurs on a state level. So that's our focus at this point. We also have identified several potential effects as a subcommittee, but we'd also like to hear from you as far as what potential effects you see. And I will kind of open up with that. The subcommittee members also may have questions that they may want to ask you directly as well. So welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Kind of starting with what I just opened up with. What do you see as the potential effects on the state cannabis programs that are in existence right now if the feds decide to reschedule cannabis from a 1 to a 3 controlled substance?
I don't see, and I'm not an expert on Nevada's specific program, but I'll say I do not see the rescheduling having a tremendous effect on how states are able to operate their programs, for 2 reasons. One is that it remains a controlled substance under federal law, so the many of the restrictions that go with that status remain. On the other hand, FDA has not taken enforcement action that interferes with state cannabis programs, and there's no reason to think that they will start doing so. So I think we're in terms of what states can do in their own regulation, I think the environment will not change very much. The principal change in the environment would be the tax treatment for the companies, which would have a much better tax situation.
I don't know if you read this, but I was reading this today, was the Congressional Research Service. They did a very short paper titled Department of Health and Human Services Recommendation to Reschedule Marijuana Implications for Federal Policy. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it really focused on the medical state programs being affected by the rescheduling. Didn't really say much about the recreational side, and I was just wondering if you had any insight on that.
Yeah, again, I think ultimately the states in this area can set up programs in any way that they would like. The fact is, like, in a certain sense, all the state programs violate federal law, right? Because it is a controlled substance, it remains a controlled substance, and under the FDA statute, any substance that is used to treat a disease is technically a drug and has to go through the approval process. That said, it has been true both under the appropriations language that Congress passed regarding medical programs and FDA's own enforcement posture regarding state medical marijuana programs really since the 90s, that FDA has not interfered in that. And that's why I think it doesn't change things for state programs. Now, ultimately, it's up to states whether they themselves want to change their programs based on what schedule cannabis is in, and they're of course free to do that. But there wouldn't be any automatic or I think practical effect to how FDA behaves.
And I kind of asked the same question. We had Shane Pennington as a speaker at our last subcommittee meeting.
Yep.
But I asked this of him, and I'm just curious what your answer will be. How do you think it will be regulated if the FDA regulates it? Is it going to be a food, or is it going to be, pharmaceutical? What do you see it being regulated as?
You mean if it's rescheduled? I don't think that will change. So FDA is not going to, by regulate, if you mean, is FDA going to go and enforce things, inspect and enforce? I think it will not, just as it is not now. So the rescheduling from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 does not change cannabis, the status of cannabis products under the FDA statute, the Food, Drug, Cosmetic Act, at all. The reason I say that is whether something is technically a drug under the Food, Drug, Cosmetic Act is a separate question from what schedule it's in. Whether something is a drug depends on, number one, whether it's intended to affect the structure and function of the body, and number two, whether it is claimed to treat a disease or condition. And those things make something a drug under state medical cannabis programs, regardless of what schedule they're in. And then as far as foods go, FDA would consider cannabis to be an unlawful food additive, regardless of what schedule it's in, simply because there are rules about what you can add to food where FDA, something has to be generally recognized as safe, or there has to be a process for that, which cannabis has not gone through. Now, that said, FDA has not done enforcement in this space, and there's no reason to think that it will. So I think both things are true. Cannabis remains for a food item that has cannabis in it. It remains illegal under FDA statute, but also something that FDA is not enforcing.
So some of the other potential effects that we've kind of identified as a subcommittee are banking, criminal justice system, medical insurance, research, taxes. Are there any other potential effects that you think that maybe we're missing on this list?
No, I think I think there's an important symbolic effect to this is a decision by FDA scientists that cannabis does not present the same public health calculus that it did under Schedule 1. Now, that doesn't, again, change its status under FDA statute, but this is the nation's top public health regulator saying that cannabis does not present the risk of a Schedule 1 substance. And so that may affect, and when I say political, I don't mean in a Democratic or Republican sense, but it may affect the policy calculus that a lot of states have in terms of their assessing of, public health risks.
I was going to just kind of open this up to the other subcommittee members. Does anyone else have questions that they'd like to ask Mr. Steinberg?
And I will point out my brother is the CEO of a hospital in Nevada, so I do know how to pronounce the name of the state.
Oh, I thank you very much. We've had some people at the Cannabis Compliance Board will come before him and say Nevada, so we appreciate that. I think Member Klein has a question for you.
Howard, thank you so much for joining. Appreciate your time. I know this is probably outside of your expertise, but wonder if you have any thoughts off the top of your head. There was some discussion over the last couple of meetings about the mission of this commission because the legislation was a little bit unclear about whether it was requiring consideration of rescheduling or descheduling. In so much as there was a Supreme Court case in the state that seems to imply that cannabis is or should be descheduled. We had Jillian Shower as a guest last week or 2 weeks ago, the head of CANRA, who opined that if cannabis were descheduled at the state level, that it really wouldn't affect the state programs because the rules are what they are. Unless the rules are changed, they would be status quo. But I just wanted to get a gut check from you and see if you agree with that assessment.
Status quo federally, yes.
Or would a descheduling at the state level affect the status quo at the state level?
Would a descheduling at the state level affect the status quo at the state level?
Without any rule changes, yeah.
I couldn't really comment on the intricacies of state law. I can only talk really about federal. The state scheduling decisions do not have an effect really on federal law pretty much at all.
Yeah, the nuance is that, and again, this is probably not a great question for you. I just really want to make sure that we've crossed our T's and dotted our I's on this. The legislation asked us to look at, whether cannabis is descheduled or is actually removed from Schedule 1, which we interpret to mean either deschedule or reschedule. And so, the question for us is because there's this Supreme Court case in the state that seems to imply that cannabis is now or should be descheduled, whether that would affect the state programs. Our assessment has been that it probably won't because the rules are already in place. but I hear you that your expertise is really limited.
Yeah, I can't really say anything intelligent on that. I would just be guessing because I'm not an expert really on the state law.
Does any of the other subcommittee members have any questions? I have another question. I know you said
Sure.
taxes. What about banking? We were talking about this last time and Shane Pennington was able to kind of give us a little bit of insight, but I'm not sure if maybe you can give us
So
some.
the
more?
big issue in banking is that controlled substances are there are restrictions under federal law in transactions you can engage in involving money derived from the sale of controlled substances or from controlled substances generally. And that's something that whether something is Schedule 1 or Schedule 3, those laws still apply. The way for that to be changed is the passage of the Safe Banking Act, which I guess passed the Senate a few days ago. And remains to be seen whether it'll pass the House. And that would amend federal law basically to say that those restrictions would not apply if something is complying with state programs. And it is very cumbersome for companies in this space because a lot of banks will not want to do business with them because they worry about federal regulators, and a lot of businesses that have a particular compliance focus don't want to transact with businesses or they don't want to transact with businesses with money that the business is derived from selling cannabis. And that makes things a lot more cumbersome for companies in this space. So I think if the legislation were to pass, that would make things a lot easier.
What about also if it's moved from a 1 to a 3 on a federal level, doctors being able to prescribe it and insurance actually covering it? Do you see that changing in any way, or if it's outside?
No,
your
I don't think so. I
fine.
mean, again, the prescribing issue is complicated because some of that is state law. So doctors under a lot of state programs can authorize medical marijuana, right? Medical cannabis. Insurance coverage, the issue there is that the products for a lot of insurance companies, and I can't speak to all, but they're not approved drugs, federally approved, which is the dividing line for a lot of insurance policies about whether they'll cover it. So rescheduling really doesn't affect that. Now, an insurance company can, I'm not an expert in insurance law, but an insurance company can cover whatever it wants to cover. But you could be an insurance company that is covering all kinds of things. But right now, that's not the case.
What about the research? I think there was some discussion at our last subcommittee meeting with Dr. Schauer and Shane Pennington. And it was briefly discussed, and I don't really recollect it, but there was some discussion as to whether this would open research.
Yeah, so I very much defer to Shane on this, who is an expert on, there's a statute that Congress passed specifically on cannabis research, which governs how the research can be done. And that was passed, before HHS's announcement on the rescheduling. So that statute would be in effect whether it's Schedule 1 or Schedule 3. So and Shane knows 10 times more than I do about that particular issue, so I very much defer to him on that.
And this has come up as well, but I mean, we obviously just wanted to ask you, I mean, do you see the DEA deviating from HHS's recommendation of a 3 and maybe going lower or higher? It's obviously a topic of conversation.
Yeah, with the caveat that I don't have a complete crystal ball here, and so I'm just guessing. I think it's unlikely that they'll deviate. Part of it is they have to defer to FDA on the medical and scientific calculus. DEA can only deviate if it does so in a policy or legal basis. And it could do that, but I think it's unlikely to. Just in a political sense, it would be, I think, pretty embarrassing for the administration to have different parts of it come to different conclusions in something as visible as this. And I think DEA would do that if there were no legal basis for the rescheduling, but there is a legal basis for it. So it's not that they'll be forced to. And again, they have to defer to FDA and the science. So I think it's unlikely. It's not impossible, but it's unlikely.
Righty, that's all the questions I had for Mr. Steinberg, unless anybody else on the committee has a question for him. I don't see any hands or anything. I do want to thank you again for coming and attending our meeting and
Sure.
allowing us to pepper you with questions.
No,
and-
anytime. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And we appreciate your expertise and your contribution to our study. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
Howard, and thanks for saying Nevada properly. That's great.
I learned, my brother told me he's not going to speak to me if I say it wrong. So, well, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, now we're going to move on to, or I guess move back to item number 2, meeting minutes. I do want to take a few minutes to allow all the committee members to just look at them. I myself found some typos, so I just want to make sure that if we're going to move to approve them today, that we all have had an adequate opportunity to point out the typos. So I'm just going to give you 10 minutes to look at them, and then we'll have a discussion on whatever we may have had or what we want to correct, and then we'll do the motion after that. So just 10 minutes, and then we'll reconvene. Hi, Sarah. Has it been 10 minutes? Are we ready to go back on the record?
Yes, Chair. It's been about 15 minutes.
Okay. Hopefully, all the committee members had an opportunity to go back and look at the minutes before we start discussing them. So I'm going to move on to agenda item 2A. So starting with consideration for approval of the September 1st, 2023 federal rescheduling, descheduling subcommittee meeting minutes. I'm going to open it up for discussion. And I myself would just like to know the following typographical errors that I caught on page, I believe it's 5. Second sentence starts with, and it's myself speaking, now moving on to the agenda. I think I was saying moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is note from the chair and so known from the chair. So that was one typographical error I found. And then I also found on page they're not short, so I apologize. If I find it, I'll bring it up. If any other committee member right now wants to share any typographical errors that they found in the minutes.
I do.
Okay, committee member Hughes. And then when I find my other one, I'll bring it up after you're done.
It may be one of the ones that I found. So on page 6, you are speaking again. It's under the discussion of SB 277. It says, all right, and we're sitting here today. It should say the whole reason we are sitting here today. And then at the very last line of that page, it says, this subcommittee thinks as far as what we're meant to say, it should say what we're meant to study. The next item that I found was on page 9. It's where member Britton is speaking at 3705. At the very end of that, the word "and" is listed there. He did not say that word, so that word probably should be removed. And then at the end of member Klein at 3908, he says okay, but that should be contributed to you, Chair Balducci. You say, okay, I'm going to move on, which is on the next page. On page 10, where Chair Balducci is speaking at 4238, it should say, that's interesting, just raise that I was listening to a podcast prior to meeting him, and you said prior to this meeting instead of meeting him. And then I think I had one final comment on it. Oh no, that was my final comment on this September 1st meeting minutes.
Thank you, member Hughes. Does any other members have any typographical errors that they found?
I found errors in the next set of minutes, but I don't have any to add to this.
Yeah, we'll get to that one in just a minute. We're going to have to, after we discuss, we'll vote on these and then we'll move on to the next minutes. But thank you, member Bertolo, for bringing that up. I thought I had another typographical error, but now I can't find it. And I wrote down a page number that I can't read myself, so that's not very helpful. Seeing no other members, identifying typographical errors. Oh, I found it. It's on page 11. It's me again. First sentence, I've met Dr. Shower on a couple occasions, so she would really, I believe what I said was, I really think she would be helpful explaining the FBA aspect as well. I didn't go back and listen to the video, but I don't believe that's correctly transcribed. I think it's a typo as well. So with that, I think that's the only other typo I found on the September 1st minute meetings. Does anybody want to move for approval? Or Chrissy, do I need to do something else?
So what the motion would sound like if everybody's in agreement for the proposed typographical changes, it would, and if the way that I'm framing the motion you agree with 100%, anyone can say so moved. And then Chair Balducci, you can just ask it to see if there's a second. It would be a motion to approve the September 1st, 2023 minutes, subject to the recommended changes provided for pages 5, 6, 9, 10, and 11.
So moved.
Thank you, Member Hughes. That really helps. I'll second it. All others approving, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. The September 1st, 2023 minutes have now been approved. All right, Chrissy, did I do that right?
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for walking us through that one. Okay, now moving on to the next item in our agenda, which is item 2B, consideration for approval of the September 15th, 2023 rescheduling, descheduling subcommittee meeting minutes. Our name has evolved several times. Hopefully by the next agenda, we'll have our name down. I found a couple of typos on this, but I'll let Member Hughes go first, considering it takes me longer to find my typographical errors. And maybe she's already identified the ones I found. So thank you.
Okay, I'll start with page 3. Under your comments at 1431, the very end should be contributed to, and I'm going to say your name wrong, I apologize, Miss Berthelot.
No, it's good.
So it says there, sure, my name is Emily British Law, but that's not the correct language. Her name should be corrected and it should be contributed to her. Under 1458. And then on page 4, under Chair Balducci's 1528, it says, but the reality is we're not going to be able to address all topics. It doesn't mean that these topics are any less. It has the word than there. It should be significant. It should say are any less significant. And then under Senator Harris's comments at 1640, it says the word is. I don't know why my video is working. It should be isn't working. And that's on page 4. Page 5, this will be also under Senator Harris's comments. It's about, I guess, 5 lines down. She's saying, was it completely descheduled and what impact is that going to have on the industry? Hasn't had on the industry. So I went back and listened to the video. There's just some commas missing there. So she does say all of this except for the word hasn't should be has it had on the industry. And then further down on the page on page 5, Chair Balducci under 2214, where it says reschedule to something other than an upgrade, that should say other than a 3. The next page, page 6, under Senator Harris, about middle of her conversation, it says, and not every problem needs to be fixed with a bit either. That should be a bill. And then at the very bottom of this page 6, under Senator Harris's comments at 2626, instead of saying thanks for being with you, she says thanks for inviting me. I'm sorry, I have a lot on this one. Page 7, under Chair Balducci, about 4 or 5 lines down, it says, I'm going to introduce them first. You say, actually, I'm going to introduce him first. And then as you're explaining who Shane Pennington is, it says Shane Pennington is a partner in the litigation department. It says here, Quarter Right. It should say Porter Right. And then at the bottom of page 7, it's the 3rd line up, where it says public health from 2014. There should be the word to in between 2014 and 2021. On page 8, under Chair Balducci, the 2nd line, it says a high level view of what the process is at. Was it said in the recording? You said what the process, once HHS, there should not be a period after once. So is at should be removed and that period should be removed. Under Shane Pennington's comments, there's several where he says HHS, he's making it possessive HHS's, and the language in this minute says HHS is IS. That should be changed to HHS apostrophe S, or just apostrophe. Same thing with HH, the next line, DEA will do its own analysis in light of HHS's views. At the bottom of that page, about 4 lines up, where it says make a final decision with respect to cannabis, it says as scheduling, it should say descheduling. Going on to page 9, and I apologize again, I have a lot on there's 4 on this page alone. This is contributed to Shane Pennington's discussion. It's at the very end. He says where their principal so business is or where the principal so business located. Well, so shouldn't be out of there, and there should be a word between businesses and located. So it should say where their principal place of business is located. And then further down that page, on page 9, under Shane Pennington, 3529, he says, and then where we are now, where HHS is recommendation, again, that should be HHS possessive apostrophe. And then 2 lines down again, from the time of the initial request to HHS's recommendation. And then on page 11, under Member Klein at 4201, he says, so there's a Supreme Court decision that seems to imply that cannabis is descheduled or should be scheduled. in the state of Nevada, and that should be descheduled in the state of Nevada. Under Dr. Shar's testimony at 42.43, she says the next 15 minutes of conversation will be changed. And I don't know what that word is not correct. Actually, I'll have to go back and look. I didn't write down what should be. So I apologize for that. I didn't put down what that should be under that. But there's an error there. Under Shane Pennington at 4259, about the third line down, he says, I don't think your second two questions, there's a typo there. There's two Y's in that word. And hopefully, oh no, I have more. Page 17, under Dr. Scher's testimony, she says, Ashley, one hit on that one. You want to make sure. She said, Ashley, what haven't we hit on? So the numeral one should be removed and it should say, what haven't we hit on? Then under Chair Balducci at 1 minute 2:49, very first line, we haven't really heard anything about, and that should be separate words there, the banking. And then coming down mid-paragraph, but will doctors, that should be WILL. Page 18, Member Britton responded, instead of the word act, instead of just saying actually do, he said, I actually do. Page 19, under Shane Pennington's comments, the very last sentence, it should be DEA''S. Page 21, under my comments, 114, it says, I do have a question. Actually, that should actually be Ashley. And then after Nevada, at the very end of my comment, I said, and be exempt from sales tax. Page 22, under Member Klein, he says, it does feel to me, and the language on the minute says number 2, but he actually said Member Hughes. And that's the end of my comments. I'm sorry that I had so many.
Right, Member Bertolo, did you have any typos?
Member Hughes identified the one I was concerned about.
Okay. I think there is also another typo on page 23, where I'm speaking 119.25. Several lines down, I say NRS 678D. I didn't verify it with the video, but I later say it again below. And then also on page 23. No, I can't find it. So I'll just move on. I believe on page 22, just going back on that. I'm speaking 11848, last sentence I say, because I know that the gambling is going to come up again with the states. I don't know what I said, but I don't think I said gambling. So obviously I want that corrected. And then, or if it is gambling, I guess keep that in, but I don't think I said that. And then I think that may have been all the typos. Any other committee members? And Chrissy, we're gonna need help with this motion.
Oh,
This
for
is a
sure.
big motion.
It's a huge one. And member Hughes, do you happen to remember the other typo just by any chance on page 11? There was another one that you mentioned on page 11 that you couldn't recall. I just wanted to give one last shot to see. Oh, you're on mute, member Hughes.
Yes, I do remember now. That word change should be removed entirely. It should say, the next 15 minutes of conversation will be Shane and I talking about the other two parts of your question. So the word changed should be removed entirely.
Perfect. Okay. So if there are no disagreements with this motion, again, similar to the last one, I just need any member to say so moved. It would be it will be a motion to approve the September 15, 2023 board minutes, subject to the following recommended changes for recommended typographical changes to pages 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 17, 18, 19, 21, 22, and 23.
So moved.
I'll second. All others who approve? Aye. Say aye.
Aye.
I think you said aye, Dr. Bertolo, but I may have still been speaking. Can you?
Aye.
Thank you. And all opposed? Hearing none? Minutes are passed. For the September 15, 2023 meeting. All righty. Thank you for holding our hand, Chrissy, on that one.
No problem.
So I'm going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is agenda item 4, which is a discussion regarding outline of draft report and assignment of tasks. So I'm going to try and share my screen. Let's see if I can accomplish this today, since I'm having technical difficulties. Can everyone see the outline? Yes, okay, I'm seeing people shake their heads. So based off of our last 2 meetings, I took it upon myself to kind of start the outline for us of what will be ultimately the report that we hand over to the Cannabis Advisory Commission in hopefully the beginning of January, but we'll see how much we progress in the next couple months. And I just kind of wanted to do a brainstorming session and make sure that this outline kind of comports with everybody else's vision for this report. I also wanted to, because the next meeting is probably going to be in November, take the time between now and our next meeting to look at some of these topics individually and split them up and come back with a report of what you found at the next meeting and start filling in parts of this outline. So kind of starting with the first part of rescheduling cannabis as a Schedule 1 controlled substance to a Schedule 3 controlled substance on the Federal Controlled Substances Act. what I was thinking is we start with an explanation of what federal scheduling process looks like. And I think we pretty much got this through Shane Pennington and his expertise, but I was hoping that maybe one of our subcommittee members, could take this and really help to develop it so that we can just kind of plug it into the report at some time. And I know that, and I don't want to volunteer him, but I know subcommittee member Klein has some expertise on this particular subject matter. So I'm not sure if he's willing to take that on or not, but I wanted to see if he is open to doing so. Member Klein?
Yes, I'd be happy to take that on.
Okay, awesome.
Will you be sending out a delegation of duties, or should we be taking notes for this part in terms of who
You
has
know
what?
what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fill out this outline with all the subcommittee members and what we've assigned to each, so then afterward, you know what you're responsible for. So you don't need to be taking notes. I can just
Okay.
do it right now. And then after this meeting, I'll be sure to send this to everyone so they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing for the next month. And then when we reconvene, hopefully we'll have bits and pieces of our report and we can start getting drafts circulated and hopefully something, before the holidays. So I appreciate you taking this part, but I know this is more of your expertise. And so I think it'd be helpful for how I thought about this is the Nevada legislators is obviously going to be reading this, and some may or may not know what the process is. So we're kind of just educating them on what we found out and what we know as far as what the scheduling process is on a federal level. As for the potential effects to Nevada cannabis industry, so I'm going to put these down below it. And I was trying to track the language in the bill to make sure we capture everything in this report. So these can be moved, and this is really just a conceptual outline, so we can move things around. Again, I'm not really married to how it's designed right now. But these are what we identified, and these are what we've been studying thus far. And so my hope was we take these topics and we talk about them, but we also have to, per the legislation, identify maybe federal laws and the Nevada laws affected by it, and then it may be none. But the legislation does call attention to identifying the laws affected by this. So I put the potential effects under one category, and then we kind of discuss them individually, and then we just identify the laws under that. And then from there, below it, we were just going to make our ultimate recommendations. And obviously we'll discuss this in the next couple of meetings before we even vote on whether we all agree with the recommendations under every subtopic. But does anybody have any strong opinion as to how I've set it up, or do you think it's okay as is? And then we can start divvying out topics to other subcommittee members. All right, Member Britton, did you have something?
I was going to say this format looks great.
Okay, great. So, moving on, potential effects to Nevada cannabis industry. And again, we're just talking about whether the feds are going to reschedule from a 1 to a 3. And we can talk about the banking, the criminal justice. And again, I think we're going to have a guest speaker at one of the next couple meetings. Not sure if it will be the next meeting, who will discuss the taxes again. So some of this, we can just start on, but then continue to elaborate as we continue to have different guest speakers coming. So on banking, does any subcommittee member want to work on this particular topic?
I would be happy to take that on, though it's going to be very brief because I don't think anything is going to change under Schedule 3, only rescheduling. So,
and that's fine. Some of these topics we're not going to really have a lot to say on them because there may not be much of a potential effect, right? So I think that's perfectly acceptable. if for whatever reason you don't have very much on the topic, because ultimately we don't think that the effect it's going to have on the Nevada cannabis industry is hardly any. I do think there is other legislation, right? The Safer Banking Act, that's getting some momentum right now. So maybe, we can mention that, but I don't think that is kind of separate and apart to what we're studying here, right? So there may be other congressional acts that have more of a potential effect than just rescheduling from a 1 to a 3.
And
So next is-
Chair, I'm happy to jump in with Member Klein on that as well. I do have quite a bit of practical banking experience in the space in Nevada, so I'm happy to help out as needed.
Awesome. Thank you, Member Britton. I really appreciate that. And I think it would be helpful because you are in the industry, so you can kind of give a different perspective as to some of the challenges with banking. Next is the criminal justice system. I'm not really sure as far as what rescheduling will have on a federal level, but I think we still need to at least discuss it. Subcommittee member Dr. Bertolo, that's kind of your expertise. I apologize for volunteering.
I'm on top of that one.
But I thought this would be probably something you'd like to look at. The next one is medical insurance. I'm happy to look at this. I think we may need another speaker on it, but I'll definitely do my best at looking into this. So I'll add myself there. Now research. Does anybody want to take on the research part? I'm okay with taking it. I may also consult with Dr. Scherer because she does the research. We did talk some with her and Shane Pennington on it, but I can certainly reach out to her. We need more. Next is taxes.
I'll be
Member
glad.
Hughes. We all were put on this committee for no reason here, so thank you for volunteering yourself. So I'll put Hughes there. And then if during your research on these topics, you're identifying specific federal or Nevada laws, that will be where we all contribute, right? So we're all going to say this specific law and this specific law based off of the topic. So I think C and D under the outline is up to everybody because we're exploring certain topics. We're probably not going to capture all the laws that will be affected, but whatever we've identified as a potential effect and we're studying at this point, if you come across any federal or Nevada laws that will be affected, we'll add it to the list under C and D. But I don't think these need to be independently researched since we're already researching the topics. And then E. So if in your research, you're coming up with recommendations that you want to bring to the subcommittee as a whole, obviously be prepared to bring those forward so we can at least have discussions on them. And maybe over time our recommendations evolve, but at least we've started the conversation by the next meeting as to what recommendations we might be making as a whole. So then the next part of the outline is the descheduling. This is probably going to be really brief, and I'm not sure if you want me to just take who's already been assigned under the rescheduling bit and put them under the topics, and that's kind of what I'm inclined to do already. But this will probably be a lot shorter than the rescheduling, but I put it in there just so that we have it. And this is in the event that there's action by Congress. And this was something that Member Klein had brought up, and hopefully I've properly memorialized it here. But I thought we should probably throw this into the outline as well. So unless someone has any major objections, I was just going to put everybody who's already volunteered oh, as I misspell everybody's name, here, that's already been assigned another potential effect topic to look into for rescheduling. And then. Oh,
And if Director Hughes wants a little backup on the taxes, again, just like Member Klein, I'm happy to help on those ones.
yeah, and also I want to mention, we're going to have a speaker on federal taxes. So Hughes, Member Hughes, if you're not able to get to the federal part, that's fine. We can always defer our research. I just want to make sure we all have kind of our marching orders after this to do something for the month that we're not meeting. So when we get back, we all have something to contribute. So then going back to the outline, I've just put everybody there. As far as the third part, I know it's a little bit different because it's now Nevada specific. So if anybody doesn't want me to just copy over, I'm fine with that. I'm certainly comfortable with sharing with Dr. Bertolo the criminal justice system on this one, because we've already kind of started researching it. So I'm kind of skipping around, so I apologize, but I was going to help with that. I can also give the overview of the Nevada scheduling process. So I can help with that. As far as banking, Member Klein and Britton, did you want to do it together, or did Britton just want to?
This one's a little more tricky because it's the national charters of banks that are the issue. And so if things don't change at the federal level, they only change at the state level. I don't know how it would change things at the state level.
Agreed. So I think at this point, we keep it there, and it may be as quick as our study, revealed that banking on both a state and federal level wouldn't change if descheduled or rescheduled on a state level. So that's perfectly fine. I was just trying to keep with the topics as far as what we've identified. We can eliminate it too, but I think at this point, we look at it and then we can say whether or not we want to take it out of the report altogether too.
Fair enough. I can stick with it.
Brendan, Member Britton, are you okay with?
Yeah, that's fine. I
Okay.
think our report would probably outline all three of those scenarios, so that's fine.
And I think the medical and the insurance probably on a state level than a federal level requires some research. So I'm okay with taking medical insurance on the state if the state deschedulizes. And then research, I'm happy to take that if anybody else wants to help with that. No, okay, hearing none, I'll do it. And then taxes, obviously. Member Hughes, are you up for the tax part?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, awesome. Okay, I think we have a pretty solid plan. And so the hope is we do research. We can also draft up parts of the report if you like. And then what we'll start doing is putting it together and kind of seeing what it's going to look like ultimately, what's going to make it in the final report and what's not. Also, if in your research you come across something that you think may be important, and I was reading, and I don't mean to add to our list here, but there may be, and it probably falls under criminal justice system, but gun rights, if it is rescheduled on a federal level, I think we need to look at that, probably immigration as well, and housing, ability to obtain public assistance, would that be a potential effect if it's rescheduled on a federal level from a 1 to a 3? So I think it could all fall under criminal justice system, and that's fine if you find subcategories that are of particular interest when you're researching your topic. Obviously, put it in there and we can discuss it as a committee as whole when we meet the next time. So unless anyone else,
Mayor Balducci, I have a quick question.
sure.
So under the recommendation sections, I know Senator Harris mentioned she would like to see any recommendations for the legislature. Do we have to have that as a separate topic, or should it be included maybe under the recommendations?
I'm sorry, I guess maybe I'm not understanding.
So when you invited Senator Harris, you asked her what she would like this committee to report on. And she said, if we see any disasters ahead, if we see anything that needs to be changed at the state level, that we could bring to the legislature so that they could potentially fix those areas. So I didn't know if you wanted to include that on this outline as a separate category, if you wanted to include it in the recommendations as a subcategory. I just wanted to maybe ask that question if that's something we should be looking into as well.
Yeah, I think it should be under the recommendations for sure. If maybe it needs to be, its own category, we can do that as well, but we can just generally keep it under recommendations and then kind of talk about it as a subcommittee as whole. But I'm with you on that. I think there will be Nevada laws affected or federal laws that are affected. So then we probably need to, so if it's descheduled, right, NRS 453 doesn't mean, just because it's descheduled doesn't mean it's decriminalized. And so we obviously are going to point out certain things for the legislator to be looking at. And if there are recommendations where maybe there's a conflicting law or something, yes, we should probably put that in the recommendations. So thank you for pointing that out, Member Hughes. And I think we could just put it under the recommendations unless any other subcommittee members have a better idea. Okay, hearing none. Member Klein, do you have your hand up?
This may be covered under medical/insurance, but I wasn't sure whether that was really sort of focused on the insurance piece. But one open question I think that a lot of the companies are having is if cannabis is rescheduled at the federal level, does it create a prescription drug model at the state level? Because technically it does, but Howard Schlamberg, who was just on, would say, look, the FDA doesn't have resources or bandwidth or desire or personnel to start creating, good manufacturing practices and clinical studies and pre-market review for cannabis products. So it's not going to happen. It's going to, it's going to be the status quo. But prescription medication is really regulated at the state level, most of it. And so I think this is like a really important issue, but I don't really know how we tackle it because people who know what they're talking about, people who have worked at FDA say common sense will dictate nothing's going to change. But if you look at, FDA regulations, putting cannabis in Schedule 3 would necessarily mean that you would be buying your cannabis in CVS as a pill. You know what I mean?
No, I agreed. And I think that's why when I read that Congressional Research Service report, I was wondering, they're talking about how it's really going to impact the medical, but then doesn't say anything about the recreational side. And I definitely want to look at that because I agree with you. I think there will be some sort of impact on that and how medical users are able to get their cannabis.
Am I making this up, or is one of the board members a pharmacist?
I think you're making that up.
Okay.
Unless one of us is, but I was actually, that you read my mind. I'm thinking we're gonna need an expert
Yeah.
on that, and actually on insurance too. I don't know what's happening really in the insurance realm, but I'd like to know if there's discussion as to whether insurance companies would start covering it if it was rescheduled from a 1 to 3. You know, Epidiolex, right? That's Schedule 5, I believe. And so I think there will be an impact, and I'm with you on that. And I think it will be probably more on a state level than a federal level, but I think it's important that we explore that more. And I probably will have some issues when I'm researching this. I'll probably need to talk to a pharmacist and someone in the insurance industry to see what the potential effects may be, if at all, for them.
So I have a relationship with the guy who leads public policy at Jazz Pharmaceuticals, which used to be GW Pharma. They're the ones that own the patent on Epidiolex.
Mm-hmm.
He would have a good sense of, you know, if FDA hypothetically were to create a prescription drug model, like what that would mean. He probably wouldn't have any insight on what it would mean at the state level. But if you decide you want to speak to a pharmacist to really better understand the impacts at the state level, which I agree is quite essential for this project, I'd be happy to ask him to talk to us about the sort of other side of the coin, if that would be helpful.
No, that would be helpful. So I just want to say, I really appreciate the members of this subcommittee stepping up and helping to identify experts and helping to coordinate them and get them to speak to the subcommittee and the public as a whole. So I do appreciate that. And I think that would really be helpful if he's able to accommodate coming and talking to us. I'm definitely going to start looking for someone in insurance, because I think with some of the public comment we had at our inaugural meeting, people were wondering about that. So I definitely want to look at that as well. I think it's probably from a state level, but we'll still explore both those. And I appreciate you taking the time and finding experts and helping coordinate them. Is there anything else on this outline?
One last question on that. Just let me know if you want him to come as a guest speaker to the next meeting, or whether you'd rather, and I don't know whether this is appropriate or not, but rather have a one-on-one conversation with him, or you just tell me how you want to handle it and I'll reach out to him.
Yeah, that's fine. We can reach out offline to him, and then if he has a chance or wants to talk to the subcommittee as a whole, or if I think it would be helpful, we can do that as well. So okay, moving on. Any other comments on the outline? Seeing none, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And now I'm going to move on to the next item on our agenda. Item 5. So future presentations by subject matter experts. So I think we've already kind of discussed this item during our discussion on item 4. I do want to, I think subcommittee member Britton was able to maybe get an expert on taxes. But we are not sure if that expert will be available for our next meeting or not. So if we're able to secure this expert, please be prepared to ask questions. This expert would be on federal tax law, so this would be really helpful for member use on that side. And then if I can find someone in insurance, and then obviously maybe member Klein's expert. I think at this point we are pretty good. I have in mind another expert, maybe on the criminal justice But I need to reach out to them before. I don't really want to put their name out there yet unless they're willing to come and talk to us. So and if Dr. Bertolo, if you have any thoughts on experts for criminal justice, let us know and we can see if we can have them come and speak at one of our subcommittee meetings. I know that there was quite a bit on the federal level, some criminal justice reform involving federal cannabis crimes, but so that might be helpful to have as a discussion. But I think we're also looking at the state level as well, you and I. So unless anyone has any other comments on this, I was going to move to the next item.
I would just mention that Ian Stewart, who chairs the cannabis practice at Wilson Elser in Los Angeles, is the most well-known insurance expert in the cannabis industry, probably. So again, if that would be helpful, I'd be happy to make that connection.
Yes, that would be very helpful. Thank you, Member Klein. Alrighty, I'm going to move on to agenda item 6. I kind of already hinted at the future meetings. We've been kind of at this every 2 weeks, and so the month of October, we're going to take the time to look at these topics, start drafting, so we can come back on November 3rd is what our next meeting will be at, to really start putting a draft report together and having discussions on what we found and what we may ultimately recommend as a subcommittee. So unless anyone has any other comments on that item, I'm just going to move on. Okay.
I'm sorry, can I just ask a point of clarification? So we're not meeting in October?
No.
Okay.
Because if we did, the only time that I could would be next week, and I feel like that's kind of too close to meet. And I also think we probably need some time to look at these topics and research ourselves instead of talking to subject matters every meeting. I think we need to have our own discussions and brainstorming sessions on what we found, and I'm hoping that this month-long little hiatus will give us the time to come back here and then be able to educate the subcommittee as a whole and hopefully have recommendations. Okay, moving on to item 7, public comment.
If you wish to provide public comment, click the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen. Or if joining by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. As a reminder, public comment is limited to 30 minutes. We'll let you know when you have 30 seconds left of your time. Okay, the first person I have is Eli. Please state your full name before providing your comment.
Greetings, subcommittee. For the record, my name is Timothy Eli Addo, and I am speaking on behalf of Kimovar.io. I'm a cannabis advocate, and I just wanted to draw the attention on a very important article that I believe it's in the U.S. Constitution, which is in chapter 6, and I believe chapter 6 indicates that the Article 6 of the United States Constitution establishes the laws and treaties of the United States made in accordance with its supreme law of the land, forbids a religious test as a requirement for holding a governmental position, and holds the United States under the Constitution responsible for debts. I just wanted to highlight what it meant by in terms of establishing laws and treaties of the United States. That's a very key word. And I would like to go into, and the reason I'm saying that is I would like to correlate that with, just give me 1 second, please. I would like to correlate that with the, okay, with the United Nations Treaty. Just give me 1 second. Let me, yep. So the United Nations Single Convention Treaty, and I believe this is section 28, paragraph 2. I would like, since we're doing, since there's been some sort of research basically being brought up in here, I would like to state that from a state level, in other words, just to, you know, just to state that, unfortunately, there is some treaties that does obviously triumph state laws. So I believe that we should at least consider those treaties and look into how the state of Nevada could really put together pretty much a system that reinforces and then also redirects and decriminalizes this altogether, because the United Nations has worked partly, and now with other government and agency bodies that have been involved as well. I think that it's very important that we understand
30 seconds.
that chapter of the Constitution, which is chapter 6, and also how we could correlate that to the United Nations single treaty, and then see if there is any recommendations that could be made from that level of understanding, because I believe we're missing a lot if we do not include those. Thanks for your time.
Okay. Next, we have Abad Pisa. Go ahead.
It just sounded like a whole thing of idiocracy going on. Talking about the medical aspects of this, but I've been a medical patient since 2008, and I've known that this has been studied medically for decades before that. So I'm just urging you guys to please do the research and look into this. And although descheduling may not decriminalize it, at least it may change the punishment, or at least the severity of the punishment in the future. That's one of my hopes ultimately as well. But I'm hoping you guys do a whole lot of research before you come back, because this, like you said, I like the fact that you iterated it, because you guys keep going over the same thing meeting after meeting after meeting. So if you guys could start coming with some new stuff where you guys are actually doing something, because the money that's being given to you, if there is any money being given to you, it's supposed to be going to the schools. So, or to helping our communities grow. And
Okay, it looks like we've
were
lost
you
the
guys able to
connection.
hear me?
No, we were unable to hear you. You have 30 seconds.
Oh my God. Oh, okay. Man, okay. So from the beginning, I was saying that I'm hoping you guys actually take this time to study information you guys can on this, because I was a patient since 2008, and the very beginning of this seems like a whole lot of idiocracy. And it just doesn't make sense that the money is going to you guys when it should have been going to the schools and to bettering our communities and such. And again, I've been a medical patient since 2008, and I know that there's studies that go decades before that. So it doesn't make sense that we're asking people questions medically that they can't even answer. Like, you know, it just didn't sound right what was going on in the very beginning of this. It made a whole lot of didn't make a whole lot of sense. So I'm really urging you guys to take this time to please just study, to bring new things to the table like you had iterated in the beginning, because this is my life, you know, my life is in this.
Okay, we've lost the connection again. We have no additional public comment.
Okay, we're gonna move on to agenda item 8, right? Adjournment. Meeting's over. Thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.